today to receive testimony on Western water legislation relating to the current climate-driven drought, as well as an important bill regarding American Samoa. Before we get to today's business, I want to repeat that the delay in securing clean drinking water for many rural and tribal communities is unacceptable. A year ago, the subcommittee held a hearing in coordination with several other committees about the desperate need to address the drinking water access crisis. Reclamation is under the committee's jurisdiction and has a key role in fixing this serious and ongoing problem. The Bureau of Reclamation, along with the rest of the federal government, is not moving fast enough to see critical resources needed to get to the hard-hit communities. These communities have enough to worry about with the current situation without having to use their limited capacity to jump through a wave of hoops for drinking water that shouldn't be one of them. The committee is not alone in recognizing this problem. The Bipartisan Streamlining Federal Grants Act, authored by Senators Peters and Cornyn, could help, but it's time to use existing water resources to help communities now. So the point of this is we may need the benefits of additional legislation, but all the foot dragging on using existing authorities is unacceptable. I'll come back to the issue of improving water access later in the hearing as when we get to questions of our reclamation witness, Commissioner Touton, about the progress the agency has made in addressing these challenges to date and what can be done to accelerate these efforts. Let me wrap up by comments with respect to drought and several pieces of legislation on the calendar today. We're going to look at a number of issues facing the Bureau of Reclamation. Some of the bills on today's agenda promote drought resiliency. The bills on today's agenda also aim to improve infrastructure and management to improve the safety, reliability, efficiency, and conservation of surface, groundwater, and natural storage. The hearing provides an opportunity to look at 15 bills as proposed solutions to the climate-driven drought crisis that plagues the West. In addition, the committee will consider H.R. 6062 legislation to restore the ability of the people of American Samoa to quickly approve and implement amendments to their territorial constitution. This is, in my view, a common sense bill that's going to eliminate federal red tape for a territory to do what any state can already do on its own. We have Representative Wyden in the House today, the House delegate from American Samoa, who authored this legislation in attendance to emphasize its importance, and I want to commend the representative for her good work. Furthermore, I've written testimony from Governor Mauga in support of the legislation that I would ask be entered into the record, and so we tell our staff, I ask unanimous consent to be entered into the record at this point. In a moment, other members of this committee are going to have an opportunity to make opening remarks. The legislation on the agenda today joins other important legislation, including 3 of my bills, the Water for Conservation and Farming Act, the Watershed Results Act, and the Klamath Power and Facilities Agreement Support Act that the committee considered earlier this Congress. So I look forward to continuing our work here. Senator Risch and I have worked in a bipartisan way on these sorts of natural resources issues for many years, and I appreciate his cooperation, and we're going to work to advance the legislation that demonstrates how serious we are about tackling these issues. Senator Risch.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing today. Obviously, water is an incredibly important issue in the western states. Our friends east of the Mississippi don't have a really good grasp of how important water is to us out west. And as a result of that, we do spend an inordinate amount of time on it, but very important to do that. Western water issues are localized and they're nuanced, and one-size-fits-all models really don't work. The precious time and resources go into water supply management efforts. Solutions to problems need to be tailored by the people who truly understand the needs on the ground, with support from federal partners, if and only if their involvement is appropriate. Idaho is a good example of state leadership in water management. I have one bill on this agenda that is very nuanced in a particular area, and I'm glad you have that on. I'm also glad to see the attention spent to American Samoa. On the Foreign Relations Committee, we know that what happens in the Pacific is important to America. We're trying to spend more and more time focusing on the Pacific because it is an important region, and China has already spent a lot of time and a lot of focus there. So I'm glad we're spending this time there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said, colleague. And at this point, we're going to recognize those on the dais, and then we'll go to our colleagues in the House. Let's see, Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for today's hearing and for including several bills that we're proud to champion. I also appreciate Commissioner Tootin for joining us today and for her unwavering commitment to making Colorado and the entire West to help us make the most of the water supplies and the shortages we face as a result of this long-term drought. Her commitment to work with all parties to use our experience and science to deal with this uncertain future in the best possible way is remarkable. And that's what the bills we have on the docket today would do. I mean, in the West, water really is life, and we have no crystal ball, but we have to be ready for whatever comes. We have one bill to reauthorize the Upper Colorado River Basin System Conservation Pilot Program, which I'm proud to co-lead with Senator Barrasso. And this bill helps the Upper Basin states like Colorado and Wyoming to continue to investigate the best ways to take on voluntary water conservation measures between now and 2026. As the Commissioner knows, in 2026, that's when our current plans for managing the Colorado River expire. Understanding now what works best for water conservation in the Upper Basin can help us handle a drier future. Also proud to join my colleague, Senator Michael Bennett, on a bill to help ensure the affordability of the Arkansas Valley Conduit, a critical infrastructure project in southeastern Colorado that he's been working on for more than a decade. These communities have been working on they've been waiting 60 years to get clean, reliable water. We're committed to getting that done. I've also worked with Senator Lummis and with you, Mr. Wyden, on legislation that would continue the good work that the Department of Interior is already doing on water. Our bills reauthorize the Bureau's authorities under the Reclamation States Emergency Drought Relief Act, as well as key DOI programs for stream gauge and groundwater monitoring. And then lastly, we're also really looking forward to diving in on the Water Project Navigators Act that Senator Moran and I just introduced. And this would create a new reclamation program to help communities, rural communities especially, and tribes build up on their own internal capacity to develop projects that can benefit both water supply and the environment. We'll dig deeper on each of these during my time with questions, but for now, thank you again for the hearing.
Let us recognize that 100% of Colorado's senators are in the House. Senator Padilla, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Risch, for convening this important subcommittee hearing on water legislation. I also want to extend my personal gratitude to Commissioner Tootin for her, not just her testimony today, but all the work that she's done to help manage the complex water issues facing California and the West. Happy to discuss the 3 water-related bills of mine that are on the agenda. But as the West continues to adapt to the climate crisis and a historic drought, it's more important than ever to ensure that the federal government is meeting these challenges with more thoughtful, innovative, and comprehensive strategies. My bills are intended to assist the Department and the Bureau to do just that. The first of my bills, the Sacramento River Act, would authorize the Interior to set up federal leadership committees to improve federal coordination of ecosystem restoration projects. This increased coordination would particularly help in the Sacramento Valley, where a coalition known as the Floodplain Forward Coalition is working to develop and implement nature-based solutions to provide benefits for the environment, migratory birds and fish in our farms, towns, and cities. Another provision of the bill would allow the Bureau of Reclamation water users to retain revenues from the sale of surplus water. That happens from time to time. surplus water. These proceeds would go to fund drought resiliency and dam safety activities. This change would also serve to incentivize water utilities to generate surplus water when they can in times of drought that would relieve the water shortages and improve water drought resiliency and dam safety. The second bill will simply increase the authorization of funding for the San Joaquin River Restoration Program, which supports one of the most productive agricultural regions in the country, while also creating a healthy living river for Chinook salmon. Increasing the cap for the program will enable the Bureau and the state of California and other key partners to advance projects necessary to the continued success of the program. And I particularly want to thank Senator Hoeven for co-sponsoring this bill with me. The third and final bill would establish an interest-bearing account for the non-federal contributions to the Lower Colorado River Multi-Species Conservation Program. This program is an underrated success story that has been hugely beneficial in stocking thousands of native fish and increasing the numbers of breeding migratory birds. However, a lack of reinvestment due to the fact that the account is not able to collect interest diminishes the value of the program. This bill would correct that. I believe these three straightforward bills would provide the federal government with additional tools to bolster drought resiliency, improve water supply reliability, and help restore our imperiled ecosystems across California and the West. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for your generous consideration of these items.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Here's what we'll do at this point. We'll recognize Senator Bennett, then we'll recognize Senator Fisher, and we'll give you the opportunity to be excused after your remarks, and then we'll have the Commissioner Tootin come on up. Senator Bennett,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you, Chairman Wyden. It's great to be here with my neighbor, Senator Fisher, and good to be with you. And Ranking Member Risch, thank you very much for holding this hearing, the members of the subcommittee, and especially my colleague, John Hickenlooper from Colorado, to talk in part about a bill we introduced yesterday called the Finish the Arkansas Valley Conduit Act. I am hopeful that the influence that the senator from Colorado has on this committee will translate into broad bipartisan support for this bill. Thank you. And I also would like to recognize and to thank the Honorable Camille Tootin, the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, who's here today also as a witness. As both Senator Padilla and Senator Hickenlooper has said, she's been a champion in our shared fight between the upper basin and the lower basin to deliver clean water to throughout the region, and I'm grateful for her steadfast leadership on that issue and being able to put up with all of us. I want to just spend a minute on why this bill matters so much to farmers and ranchers in southeastern Colorado, who, by the way, share Senator Risch's views about how we should think about the water projects that we've got and why this deserves the committee's bipartisan support. Over 60 years ago, President Kennedy came to Pueblo and promised to build the Arkansas Valley Conduit. The Arkansas Valley Conduit is the last component of the Frying Pan Arkansas project, a federal water diversion and storage project in the lower Arkansas Valley, which Congress approved in 1962. When finally constructed, after all these decades later, the conduit will deliver for the first time clean drinking water from the Pueblo Reservoir to farmers and ranchers and rural communities in the Arkansas River Valley. Because of federal investment and the strong support of Commissioner Tootin, the Arkansas Valley Conduit finally broke ground after 60 years, just in the last year or so. And the current rural communities that are these current rural communities currently rely upon groundwater, and many of them are facing water contamination from naturally occurring radioactive elements. The conduit will deliver water for some communities that have fewer than 1,000 residents who primarily use the water for their farms and ranches. Since 2019, the total project cost estimates have nearly doubled, and as labor and material costs go up, the project slips further and further behind on completion. These rural communities are already on the hook, as they should be, for a significant cost share and will struggle to repay the federal government as costs continue to rise. It's important to relieve the burden of interest payments so these underserved communities can make good on their part of the cost-sharing agreement that's part of this proposal. Since I came to the Senate, as Senator Hickenlooper said, I've fought for the federal funding that rural Colorado needs to complete this project alongside with both Senator Gardner before him and Senator Hickenlooper since he arrived in the Senate. It's been a bipartisan effort all the way along that included Representatives Buck and Tipton from the House of Representatives. To finish, the Arkansas Valley Conduit Act will eliminate interest payments on all non-federal cost share funds and extend the repayment period from 50 to 100 years to ensure that these rural communities can finish this project once and for all and pay back the federal government. Farmers and ranchers in southeast Colorado need Congress's help to get this project across the finish line and access for the first time clean, safe water for their families, for their crops, and for their livestock. I've come with letters and testimony from the state of Colorado and the Southeastern Colorado Water Conservancy District, all supporting the bill. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent that these letters be entered into the hearing record.
Without objection, so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope this common sense bill will earn a strong bipartisan vote in this committee at the end of the day and find its way to the floor. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Senator Fisher, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. Senator Fisher, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Risch, for holding this hearing today and including my legislation, S 4347, the Swanson and Hugh Butler Reservoirs Land Conveyances Act, on the agenda. I, too, would like to thank the Commissioner for working so well with my office on this legislation and also with my local stakeholders in these affected counties. I've worked alongside Hitchcock and Frontier County commissioners, the concessionaires, impacted community members, and the Bureau of Reclamation on this legislation to allow 77.2 acres of land around the Swanson and Hugh Butler reservoirs to be conveyed at fair market value to the counties. Transferring this land to the local counties will chart a better path for the local community and also to the federal government. This will allow community members to continue to enjoy the reservoirs and preserve numerous small businesses that operate in that area. Since introducing the legislation, I've heard from over 1,000 constituents and have received numerous letters of support from local businesses. Action on this legislation is urgent, as the Bureau of Reclamation's extended concession contracts, well, they expire in February of 2025, and some community members face being displaced due to the Bureau's plan to end private exclusive use at the reservoir. Hitchcock and Frontier counties are committed to ensuring continued public access to the reservoirs and providing effective management that is responsive to our local communities. A number of the county commissioners, community members, and concessionaires traveled from Nebraska to be here today, a testament to the importance of getting this legislation signed into law and their commitment to providing effective management of the land. I'm also glad the entire Nebraska congressional delegation, as well as members of Congress from Kansas, have joined me on this legislation. Just yesterday, the House Natural Resources Committee also held a hearing on companion legislation. I strongly support the full committee taking up and passing S 4347, Swanson and Hugh Butler Reservoir Conveyance Act, swiftly, so that this legislation can become law this year. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to get this legislation signed into law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. We will be working with you, and I like your underlying optimism that it should be done this year.
I know you can do it, sir. Thank you.
There's no question that the people up here want to do it this year. Okay, we will excuse you at this time. Commissioner, we welcome you. Commissioner Tootin, thank you for your patience. And Commissioner, I believe what we decided that made sense all around is we'll recognize you for your opening remarks, and then we'll have some questions at that point, okay? Welcome. Thank you for also being responsive to us.
Absolutely.
Please, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Wyden, Ranking Member Risch, and members of the subcommittee. I am Camille Klimlim-Tootin, the Commissioner for the Bureau of Reclamation. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on activities and provide the administration's views on the legislation before you today. Reclamation's mission is rooted in delivering water and producing hydropower. The legislation today helps to provide us with tools that allow us to meet our mission, serve the American West, and ensure that communities have sustainable water supplies today and into the future. Key to that mission is our ongoing work to address the drought in the Colorado River Basin. To assist reclamation in those efforts, the administration has invested more than $4.2 billion through President Biden's Investing in America agenda across 566 projects in 7 Colorado River Basin states that increase water storage, increase water recycling and desalination, improve system efficiency, repair aging infrastructure. Several of the bills provide us with additional tools to be successful on the Colorado River. Senator Sinema's Help Hoover Dam Act and Senator Padilla's Multi-Species Conservation Program bill offer practical solutions to better use existing resources. The Help Hoover Act allows reclamation to access unused funds totaling approximately $48 million collected since 2000 to support ongoing operations and maintenance of critical infrastructure. Over the next 5 years, current estimates are that Hoover Dam will require $110 million in major plant investment over and above routine operation and maintenance. S 4016 allows funding that has already been collected to be used to stabilize future hydropower rates without deferring the important major plant investments. The MSCP Amendment Act authorizes the establishment of interest-bearing account for over $70 million of already received funds and reduce the need for future federal appropriations to support balancing the needs of water and power users and the ecosystem. The habitat created by this program is showing great success for this species. Senator Lee's bill addresses the implementation of reclamation's action to protect the humpback chub and other native species through the Grand Canyon. This will require the Western Area Power Administration to use funds from the Basin Fund to replace power that would have been otherwise been generated. We appreciate Senator Lee's commitment to this issue and look forward to continuing to work together on a sustainable path. We also want to highlight the initial results of this year's long-term experimental management plan operations have been successful. Senator Hickenlooper's System Conservation Extension Act provides reclamation with 2 additional years to our efforts that have demonstrated that voluntary compensated water conservation projects can conserve water for the Colorado River system to mitigate the impacts of drought. Since 2015, we've conserved more than 148,000 acre-feet, and this legislation provides the Upper Basin with the authority to continue these activities. The Department supports system conservation program activities in the Colorado River Basin and recommends that such activities should be continued. In California, in the Central Valley Project, Senator Padilla's San Joaquin River Restoration Program Reauthorization Act would increase the authorization of appropriations from $250 million to $750 million for this important program. The San Joaquin River Restoration Program is an illustration on how we can continue to manage water resources throughout the state in an environmentally sound manner while maintaining a water supply. Reclamation supports the goals of this legislation, as additional funding along with continued matching funding from the state of California is necessary to meet the goals of the program. The legislation also allows us to continue our work in the Valley in implementing a South of Delta drought plan. Senator Padilla's Sacramento River Act has 2 separate and broad-ranging goals that would be applicable to reclamation projects across the West. Given the complexity of the projects, Reclamation would like to better understand the impacts of this legislation West-wide and work to ensure the authorities are implementable, effective, and would achieve intended goals. Access to clean drinking water is critically important to sustaining life and livelihoods. Reclamation is improving access to drinking water through more than $800 million allocated to the Rural Water Program, $290 million for the Arkansas Valley Conduit through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, $82 million for domestic water supply projects for WaterSmart program over the past few years. And to further this work, Senator Hoeven's Dakota Water Resources Amendment Act, Senator Bennett's Arkansas Valley Conduit legislation, and Senator Round's Rural Water Supply Program reauthorization all demonstrate a commitment to providing safe, reliable resources of drinking water to all Americans. We are pleased to support the goals of these three bills. Senator Lujan's WaterSmart for Tribes Act responds to tribes, state, and local stakeholders to reduce the barriers and provide assistance for communities to better access reclamations programs. These programs are proven and successful with 958 projects with over $1.4 billion in WaterSmart funding since January 21. Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Lummis's Drought Preparedness Act would extend the authorities set to expire at the end of 24. We are happy to support these bills. Senator Fisher's Swanson and Hugh Butler Reservoir land conveyance bills respond to local partners' interest in managing public lands for recreation purposes. And Senator Hickenlooper's Water Project Navigator Act seeks to expand the pool of potential applicants to successful reclamation programs that work diligently to support tribal and disadvantaged communities. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee, and to professional staff, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and for the trust that you've placed in the Bureau of Reclamation. We do not take that trust for granted. We recognize that it's earned, and we are proud of our ability to have met our mission in the challenging time in this organization and more. It is a privilege to serve as the Commissioner of the Reclamation. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner, and as I say, thank you for always being willing to sit with us and go through this. As you've heard me say, not just today, but in the past, what I hear from tribes and rural communities is they just feel that they are engulfed in red tape and bureaucracy. And there are all these processes in terms of deciding who's this and who's that. And I get all that because there has to be accountability and transparency. I get all that. But tell me what can be done to fast track the remaining money, in effect, from the IRA to these communities, because they just come to me, and I'll let my colleagues speak for themselves, and I know that nobody gets up in the morning in Washington, D.C. at your agency, especially not you, and say, hey, I want to be rotten to all these little communities in the West. Quite the opposite. I know you're very dedicated to them. We still have the reality that they just feel like they are just engulfed almost in all this red tape and delay and the hoops to try to get considered. I mean, is it possible, for example, to get the remaining money out in 90 days? I mean, what can be done to actually make sure this is sped up?
Senator, I agree with you that process should not stand in the way of access to clean water. So there are several things that we've done since we last spoke. First, we created a notice of funding opportunity under WaterSmart, specifically designated for disadvantaged communities and tribe. That was $88 million. As part of this process, too, what we've allowed is the ability that if you aren't successful, to reach out to us to do a hot wash so we can tell you where in your application you can improve, and so that when we see people do that with us, they have better success rates moving forward. I also hear you in saying we need to work with our partners in other agencies. One thing we did is sign an MOU with the Indian Health Service to partner with them on their domestic water supply for tribes and bring our engineering technical capabilities and use our funds that you all gave us as effectively as possible. We're also working with USDA on our ability to partner on more water thrifty crops is what we're calling it. We can always do more, but part of it is the ability for these constituents and our partners to know what we're doing. So tomorrow we'll be holding our 13th bipartisan infrastructure law stakeholder meeting. That is virtual, but we've also offered to go state by state, water district by water district, so we can walk through these programs. The people that work for us are in the communities we serve, and we will always be willing to do more, Senator, and I'm happy to learn how we can do that.
It sounds plenty constructive to me, and I appreciate that. Can we look at a target date of getting this money out in 90 days?
I will work with you on
Okay.
that. I will say that,
Fair enough.
thank you.
Fair enough. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. Commissioner, one last question. I know my colleagues have questions as well. We've asked you some questions about the Klamath Basin, which, as you know, there's a lot of history, particularly in terms of droughts, and you provided testimony on our Klamath Power and Facilities Agreement Support Act. As you know, Senator Merkley and I feel very strongly about that, and we've been working closely with you on it. Can you update us on your efforts to try to talk about the projects for the Klamath Basin that are coming up?
Thank you for that, Senator. There's not a week that we don't talk about the Klamath project
Good.
in our office. So when we started this water year, we had a pretty decent allocation, a little over 250,000 acre-feet for the project. It got hot in July. We're working through those deliveries for the rest of the year. But as part of that, we were able to provide $8.5 million to the Drought Relief Assistance Act legislation that you helped for us to have, as well as $5 million for technical assistance to tribes. But what we need to be able to talk about is not year by year. How do we talk about longer into the future? And so with the resources that you provided us that we will expeditiously allocate, part of that conversation is how we deploy those in the Klamath Basin for longer-term solutions.
Good. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, it's great to see you.
It's nice to see you,
And I have to
Senator.
say thank you for all the great work that you're doing, particularly in Nevada, around the water issues. I also support 3 of the bills that are before us: the Water Smart Access, the Help Hoover Dam Act, and the Lower Colorado River, Multi-Species Conservation Program. Thank you for supporting those bills. My question is going to be similar to what's happening along Colorado River. I'm going to focus on a bit of that. As you well know, the Colorado River operating guidelines expire the end of 2026. So a couple of things. One, can you provide us with an update on the status of the negotiations around those guidelines? And then also, if you would follow that with next steps will you take if the states don't find some sort of consensus around this timeframe?
Thank you for that question, Senator. First, I need to remind us where we were 2 years ago. Lake Mead hit the lowest level since filling in 1937. Today, because of the leadership of this committee and our ability to deploy resources, we're 20 feet higher at Lake Mead, 40 feet higher at Glen Canyon Dam, and we've used less water. Southern Nevada, especially Las Vegas, is an example of that, where they've used 187,000 acre-feet in 2023 of consumptive use of their 300,000 acre-feet allocation. So in the 2 years, we've shown a proof of concept that we can save a rainy day, we can conserve water, and we can still have vibrant communities. Moving forward, we need an operating plan in place in less than 2 years. I'm confident in the conversations that we're having with the basin states and the tribes. We have a federal tribes meeting on Friday, and they're all very motivated about the timeline, knowing that we need an operating plan by August of 2026 to be in place by January 2027. So people are at the table, we're moving forward, and I'll keep moving them forward with your support.
And you have it. So let me just say this, because I know this is an ongoing negotiation, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody that's at the table, and I think for purposes of several of the senators that continue to monitor this and what's happening, we are hopeful that that continues as well. And I have to give credit to my colleague, Senator Hickenlooper. He really has been the one to kind of bring all of the senators together in the basin states to continue to focus on this issue. So I thank you, because it is so important. One final thing let me ask you about. In the bipartisan infrastructure bill, Susie Lee and I fought for additional funding to support large-scale water recycling program. Susie Lee is Congresswoman from Nevada. And this really was focused on how we can get California and Nevada to do some large-scale recycling. Can you give us an update on where we are with that project?
Thank you for that authorization. We put it to work. We were able to announce $189 million for 4 projects. 5 projects, 4 in California and 1 in Utah, earlier this spring. One being the Pure Water Project in Southern California, which is a partnership with the Metropolitan Water District of California, the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and the Central Arizona Project. And we look forward to obligating the remainder of that funding.
Thank you. And the importance of those projects can't be underestimated. It really is bringing essential water and keeping water in the Colorado Basin, but he's bringing essential water to households in Nevada and really California and other areas. Conservation is part of the
Absolutely.
key to some of addressing the drought that we need in the
That
water usage
Pure
for the
Water
future.
Project is enough water for 500,000 homes annually.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The praise is flowing fast and furious for Senator Hickenlooper, so please proceed. Well, Senator Hoeven, to his undying thoughtfulness, said you and Senator Padilla will go next, and then he'll come.
Is there no limit to grace?
I owe Hickenlooper anyway. This doesn't even come close.
You're going to start rumors.
Now, if we start, I'll go collecting on several things over the years, too. Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Tootin. Your commitment and dedication to all these issues, with so much going on in such a time of incredible change, really is remarkable, and don't think for a moment that we don't all appreciate it. We've seen more than 2 decades of pretty continuous drought on the Colorado River, and you've already, the several bills I'm going to mention here, you've already enthusiastically embraced, so I won't be too prying in terms of, or demanding. When we worked with Senator Barrasso and then Senator Lummis and Romney and Bennett on the system conservation pilot to extend that, obviously we've learned lessons from the past couple years on that. Can you talk a little bit about those lessons or steps that you want to make sure we see?
Absolutely. First, I want to commend my partners with the Upper Colorado River Commission, the 4 commissioners in the Upper Basin, for the leadership in implementing this program. Over the past 2 years, we've been able to show a proof of concept of what's possible today so that it could be a practice that we can continue into the future. And so just being able to show what can and is possible is value enough to be able to say we can do this into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a voluntary way is what's important.
Scary thought. Senator Bennett already talked at some length about the Arkansas Valley Conduit, the AVC program that President Kennedy first promised. People in the Arkansas Valley have been waiting for over 60 years to get clean water. And it's 50,000 people spread over about 30 miles, 35 miles of length of the Arkansas, where they are, once we get this done, going to have fresh water for the first time, really in their lives for many of them. The wells have been polluted for a long time, so many of them are trucking water in. Mm-hmm. You and your team have been great working on this, and I guess I just want to make sure to reiterate on the record your commitment to keep working with us on this to make sure that we can continue to make the progress we've made.
I was so happy to join you and Senator Bennett at the groundbreaking. Since then, we are nearing completion on Boone Reach 1. We've started Boone Reach 2. I know we like shovel events, but I'm committed to a ribbon cutting when we complete this.
That's the spirit. Senator Moran and I worked on this Water Project Navigators Act, and I wasn't crazy about the name because it makes it sound like we're going to dredge, we're going to have navigable Platte River and Colorado River for great lengths. It's really about making sure that communities can navigate through the bureaucracy, make their applications to water smart. Many of the smaller communities, the tribes, the rural communities, haven't had that access. And I think Senator Moran and I are both very excited about being able to provide on-the-ground capacity for benefits for water in the communities, for the economy, and for the environment. And you obviously, you've supported that. Do you see any problems coming down the road for that?
I think what we need to work through in the conversation with the chairman and others is, first, let us show you what we can do. Mm-hmm. And I think those tools are there. And then have the conversation with you with the Navigators Act on how we can use these additional tools to
Right.
complement each other. The ability to have more people access these resources is a good one, and I look forward to working with you on that.
So you're suggesting that we work together. That's kind of a strange concept. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then lastly, the work that Senator Lummis and Senator Wyden have done to reauthorize the Reclamation States Emergency Drought Relief Act, as well as the programs of the U.S. Geological Survey and the stream flow, groundwater monitoring. And I realize that your agency isn't, you don't control these networks. But still, can you speak to the value of making sure we get consistent water data for your reservoirs and your programs?
Real-time data and data allows for better informed decisions. My favorite gauge is the least fairy gauge. Thanks for asking.
I won't go any further. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you,
Good to
Chair.
see you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Continuing the chorus of praise for Commissioner Tootin and her leadership with all the Colorado River states. Much, much appreciated. Keep us posted as you do so well, and however we can continue to support your efforts in advancing that collaboration and thoughtfulness. Speaking of the Colorado River, one specific item relative to the legislation I previewed earlier in my remarks, just asking if you can spend a minute talking about the importance of the Lower Colorado River Multi-Species Conservation Program, and specifically how the ability to collect interest on these funds for the program would increase the money available to do more of the good work.
Thank you, Senator. The multi-species habitat conservation plan is important, that it allows us compliance for our water power deliveries, but it helps us to enhance the ecosystem. That money's already sitting there, so we should put it to work. And our ability to put that money to work means more yellow little cuckoos that you have there. And, you know, we announced, it makes a sound, Senator, just warning you. And we announced $25 million for those efforts at MSCP at Tofak Marsh and East Yuma wetlands. This year we saw, for the first time in a long time, nesting for the willow flycatcher. So it's a success, and we're proud of it.
Okay. Thank you. And without objection, submit for the record.
I was just going to say, there we are.
Turning now.
Senator Hoeven is going to bring out his woodpeckers, apparently.
Commissioner, thank you for the souvenir.
Thank you for the legislation.
Let me ask you for your comments on a different bill that I previewed as well, on the San Joaquin River, and specifically the River Restoration Program. Appreciate your support on it. Want to, just for the record, ask you to discuss what Reclamation would be able to do with additional funds to implement the program.
The San Joaquin Restoration Program is a critically important program that we implement. It allows for the restoration of habitat for anadromous species. That's where priority of the money will go, is for specifically the Mendota Pool and Reach 2B. It allows us, again, to restore an ecosystem and help with water reliability.
And I know you've shared, not just with me, but all the stakeholders, how this program is a great example of how we can both manage water resources in California in an environmental friendly manner while maintaining a reliable water supply. They're not at odds. These are co-equal goals. How would increasing the authorization of appropriations on the program help increase the reliability of water operations, particularly in the Freant division of the Central Valley Project?
Being able to build this project now will have immediate benefits to the species. And allowing us to do that then will allow for reliability efforts for deliveries for the Friant Water Authority. I'm pleased to be joined here by the General Manager of the Friant Water Authority, and we are really excited about this support, including from the state of California in cost-sharing this program.
And on that note, I was going to ask how unique and important is the partnership with the states, and
It is.
particularly the one-to-one non-federal match for this?
Yes, Senator. Thank you.
That's a big thumbs up then. Then lastly, the third of my bills are the Sacramento River Act, specifically Section 2 of the bill. During your time as commissioner, I've seen firsthand how Your efforts have been successful to bring stakeholders together, even when it seems like they have opposing interests, from agriculture to water contractors, NGOs, tribes, communities, and others, not to mention the 7 Colorado River Basin states, 30 basin tribes, and Mexico when it comes to those negotiations. I got to tell you, one of the highlights, particularly on water for me in my time in the Senate, has been to join you at the historic water agreement signing earlier this year, impacting Central Valley water users. So you've also supported the floodplain forward collaborative efforts that I mentioned among landowners, growers, water supplies, conservation organizations, and government entities to protect the ecology of the area. Can you just share with us what your approach is? Because it's the same approach I've seen in the Central Valley, that I've seen with the Colorado River states. I imagine you're deploying elsewhere. What's Commissioner Tooten's secret sauce here?
The solutions are roots up. It has to be organic and roots up, and where the federal government can partner, especially with resources, is where we find success. You mentioned the South of Delta Drought Plan that allows for operational flexibility. It allows for upgrading infrastructure, and it allows for saving a little bit of that water when we absolutely need it. And it supports the San Joaquin Restoration Program. So where we can do that, whether it's the Sacramento Valley, the Deschutes Basin, or other places, we will do that every time.
What else do you need from us?
Thank you for your support, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Doesn't get better than that. Thank you for your support. Senator Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing today and for including Senate Bill 4996, which is my bill regarding the Dakota Water Resources Act. And also, of course, thank you to Commissioner Tooten. Thanks for being out in North Dakota for your incredibly important work on this bill. As you know, it's a big deal for us. And having come out several times to our state and helping us craft it. Also, it's bipartisan, and I want to thank Senator Padilla for your support of this legislation. And I'm pleased to work with you on this and on your legislation as well. So thank you for that bipartisan support. I have, Mr. Chairman, letters here from the state of North Dakota. From the Garrison Diversion, from the Lake Agassiz Water Authority, from North Dakota Rural Water, as well as letters of support from the tribal nations in our state, including the 3 affiliated tribes, which is Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, as well as the Spirit Lake Tribe, and the Sisseton, Wahpeton, Oyate Tribe. And I would ask that these letters of support for this legislation be included.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Tooten, again, having been out to our state on multiple occasions, and I do commend you for that, and obviously you're getting to these other states as well. And I think that says a lot about your commitment to do this job and do it well, and do it from a position of knowing what you're working on. And getting out there and actually seeing these projects makes such an incredible difference. And so when we talk to you about the Northwest Area Water System, NAWS, and how we've been working on that for more than 20 years, and we're getting very close to fruition. But you've actually been out to Garrison Dam on Lake Sakakawea and seen what we're doing in terms of utilizing existing resources that we have and that Reclamation has, and that's a win for the federal government as well as for our state. And of course, when we talk to you about it, that's one thing, you having actually been there and been down inside that amazing construction project, not only the dam, but the pumping plant and all these different things is incredibly important, as well as when we talk about NDOS and, bringing water to eastern North Dakota and utilizing federal resources that have been constructed over the years, which are not now being utilized, like the McCluskey Canal, for example, not only creates a revenue opportunity, combining the dam and these canals not only provides a revenue opportunity for the federal government, which is incredibly important, but it saves our state a lot of money and benefits the tribes as well in terms of these water projects. You get it, you've been there, you've seen it, and you've been on both ends. You've been out in western North Dakota, you've been in eastern North Dakota, and understand that it affects our entire state as well as as Western Minnesota too. So your support for this project is incredibly important. I guess the only question again is just to put it on the record is, will you continue to work with me, our state, and the tribes to do all we can to pass this legislation and to pass it by the end of the year so that we can ensure the authorizations are in place for fiscal year 2025 funding?
Yes, and Senator, we didn't summer in North Dakota this summer. So
No.
Just first, the ability to be able to see the source and then to go to the people we will serve with this project has always stayed with me to understand what this means. So yes, I look forward to working to continue this project with you.
And we still need to get you back when it works, because as you know, we have another trip planned for you and to make some stops, including getting you out on some of the lakes there like we talked about.
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, my colleagues say they're done with questions. I want to leave you with one thought. Listening to you and my colleagues, it's clear that you're making very strong efforts to carve out resources for these important projects. That's never been the question, nor has your sincerity and your professionalism ever been a question, for me. What I've been concerned about is fast-tracking this and making it happen more quickly. So let's do this. Apropos of my request to get the money out in 90 days, why don't we say let's have you give us a report on where we are in the next 90 days. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for fast-tracking this, I would really like to see that make a legacy, that be a legacy for this committee, because I continue to believe, having done this for a while, very often the challenge is to get beyond some of the traditional ways of doing business and speeding things up. I find once in a while somebody gets up in Washington, D.C. and basically says, I don't want to do this, period, I don't care for them. That's not the case. But I think they do get up and find they're just sort of almost muscle-bound by these kinds of rules. And there's a lot of money left in that IRA, program. And these are rural communities and tribal communities, and they're hard hit. And, water is not an abstract issue. This is life and death and community well-being. So why don't we assume that after a passionate argument about this whole thing, kidding aside, what we'd like to do is see if we can speed this up. Let's have a report in 90 days with respect to where we are and any ideas. In fact, some of them may require legislation, which I'd be happy to work with you on, and consider that the next step. So I thank my colleagues for their cooperation. For the record, members will have until the close of business tomorrow to submit additional questions for the record. And Ms. Tootin, let me repeat again, you've always cooperated with us. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And with that, the committee is adjourned.